What's going on, guys? Today we are inside of Affinity Publisher V2, and in today's tutorial I want to show you how you can quickly put together a save the date wedding invitation for any of you guys that may be getting married and want to print your own invitations from home. Or alternatively, if you want to print a custom wedding invitation for somebody else that you may know, then I will show you all the steps required to print from home. So the first thing that you want to do is open up Affinity Publisher V2 or V1. It really doesn't matter what version you are on. Then inside of this new document window, we need to choose the correct size that we're going to use in order to create our wedding invitation. So the most common and popular size for a wedding invitation is going to be an A6. So what we want to do is go ahead and choose an A6. But before we do that, I just want to talk about a couple of differences that we have here. So you'll notice that at the moment we are on A6 and we are inside of the print menu. Then below that we also have this press ready section right there that also features an A6. So with the press ready and the print sections, essentially both of these are exactly the same. They have all of the same sizes inside of here. And the only difference between the two of these is going to be the color profile, which we can just see over here. At the moment we are in CMYK when we choose an A6 in the press ready. Whereas if we go back up to the print and we choose an A6 right there, then our color profile has now changed to RGB. So without getting too technical about these color profiles, all that you need to remember is that if you want to print anything that you are designing, you want to be working in CMYK. Whereas if you are designing for web or device, then you want to work in RGB. So because I plan on printing this come the end of the project, I'm going to go ahead and choose the A6 in the press ready. Then that is going to give us that color profile of CMYK. And what else we need to make sure that we have inside of here is our DPI set to 300. That is going to be the industry standard and give you the best print quality. Then what we're going to do next is we'll go to our pages tab, and we only really need the one page at the moment, as you can just duplicate this by printing it as many times as you like. So we need to turn off facing pages as we want this on a single page, and I'll go ahead and just change that number of pages to 1. Then next we're going to go over to our margins, and if you guys didn't already know, every single home printer is going to have a default margin built in. So we always have to account for those margins when we are designing and printing from home. So with the margins, essentially what is going to happen is if we just look at this one right here as a demonstration, this blue box right here is going to be our margins. So if you say that this is your default margins, anything outside of this left hand side or this right hand side, top or bottom, is going to automatically get cut off by your printer. So if you have text that goes from one edge all the way over to the other, then part of that text outside of the margin is going to be cut off. So to avoid that happening, you need to know what your minimum margins are going to be for your printer. Myself, I use a Canon printer, and I know my minimum margins are 3.5 over on the left. So I'm just going to type in 3.5. Also on the right hand side on my printer is 3.5. The top also is 3.5. However, on my bottom of my margin, that is a little bit bigger, and that is going to be 5mm on my printer. So if any of you guys have a Canon printer as well, this may be exactly the same for you. However, if you do have a different manufacturer printer, just simply go ahead and check your user manual or somewhere on the manufacturer website, or just Google it, and hopefully you'll find your minimum margins. So that is it in order to set up our canvas ready for our project. So just as a quick recap, just make sure that you guys have chosen the A6. Your color profile is CMYK. You want to turn off that facing pages so we have the single page. Make sure that you have set up your minimum margins to avoid anything being cut off when you go ahead and print that. And finally, just make sure that your DPI is set to 300, and then you are good to go. So with all of that complete, all we're going to do now is go ahead and hit that create button. So here we are inside of the Affinity Publisher interface, and now we can get started with creating our design. So the first thing that I want to do is bring in some background elements before we start adding any text. And just to be a little bit quicker with this video, I've already saved some just over here over in my assets, which I'm going to use for this design. So first of all, I'm just going to drag this one in right there, and I'll go ahead and let that go once I can snap that roughly in the middle using those guides. And all this really is kind of a paint splatter effect, which you can go ahead and create this yourselves using the paintbrush tool and different types of brushes. This image in particular I got from Canva, as Canva offer thousands of different types of images like this with transparent backgrounds, so we can go ahead and use these in our designs. But of course there will be plenty of websites out there. If you just go ahead and search for maybe paint splatter PNG, and maybe you'll find something similar to this if you don't use Canva. Okay, so with that in place, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the next image that I want to use. So back over to my assets, I'm just going to go over and drag this in and drop. And once again, this is a flower image which I got from Canva, as they do offer thousands of different types of these in all different colors and really good quality with transparent backgrounds. So if you guys want to go ahead and get some of these images from Canva, I will leave a link in the description. And all you got to do is just simply download these to your computer, then import them into Affinity Publisher. Then once you've imported those into Affinity Publisher, you can just simply drag and drop that inside of your assets folder, so then you always have access to that in future. Okay, so moving on with our design, what I think I'm going to do next is bring in another one of these flower images. So I'm going to go back over to the left hand side in my assets and just drag another one in. This one, I think I'm going to rotate that round just to look a little bit different from the one at the top. So I'll bring that round to around that 90 degrees. And I'm just going to move this roughly down there for the moment till I decide what I'm going to do next. So looking at this, we're going to have all of our information in the middle of this. And I think that may look pretty good if we have it inside of some kind of border. So what I'm going to do is head over to the left hand side toolbar menu. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. And I'm just going to draw this out to a rough size that I want to use for a border. And I'm going to hold my shift key while dragging this out. That's going to keep that perfectly square. Then I'm just going to try and get a rough size which I think is going to look pretty good. So maybe a little bit bigger than that, somewhere around that size would be perfectly fine. Then what I want to do next is turn off this grey that we have as a fill. So going over to our colours over on the right hand side, I'm going to select that right there. I'm going to make that transparent. Then what I want to do is apply a stroke to this. So if we go over to where we have our black as a stroke, I'm going to go ahead and choose a different colour for this. And I think I'm going to sample a colour from our background just to make that blend in that little bit better. Maybe a dark purple just there on that leaf. So I'm going to go back over here to my colour wheel. I'm going to select this eyedropper tool right here. I'm going to drag this over so I can sample that dark purple somewhere there. And now you can see over here on the right hand side, this is our sample colour that we just took. So I'll go ahead and select that. Then what we're going to do next is make our stroke a little bit bigger so we can see that. So if we make our way up to the top left hand corner to where we have our stroke menu, inside of here, we're just going to make our width that little bit bigger so we can see it. So you can make that as big as you like. I think I'm going to have that around 2 points, or maybe just keep that 1.5 as that looks a little bit better. Next, with the join, I'm going to change this to be that flat join right there on the end. That then is going to be flat as it goes to the left all the way down to the bottom. And this is really personal preference, whether you wanted that to be rounded on the corner or you don't. For me in this design, I don't really want that rounded. I'd rather it just be completely straight, and that is why I've chosen that miter join right there. So what I'm going to do after that is probably rotate this around a little bit just to give it kind of a good design element look. So I'm going to hold down my shift key while I begin rotating this. That then is going to snap that automatically for us. And I'll put it in that rough 45 degrees right there. And I'll go ahead and just snap that into the center and move that roughly into place. Next, I think I'm going to make a duplicated copy of this. So I'll go ahead and hit Command or Control C to copy. Then Command or Control V to paste. Then with that second copy that we just created, I think I'm just going to rotate that round just a little bit, maybe by an additional 10 degrees, somewhere around there. And now that can act as our border with all of our information inside of this. So what I want to do next is just move around a few layers, as I want these flowers to be on top of this border. So over to the right hand side in our layer section, if we just drag those flowers all the way to the top, just both of those, drag that one as well and let that go. And now we can get a better idea of how to position these flowers. So this one at here at the bottom, I think I want this to line up with that bottom edge right there. So maybe just put that somewhere around there. In fact, looking at this, I think I want to actually rotate that a little bit more. So maybe just bring that round to around 105 and then go ahead and just move that back over again. This is going to be a lot of back and forth just to find something that you are happy with. That is looking okay for now. So with the top one, I want to go ahead and just line this up as well with this edge of the border. And just find a placement that you are happy with. So maybe I'll bring that over there a little bit. And that will do perfectly fine. So that is looking pretty good for our background. And now all we got to do next is just start adding all of the text that we need for our invitation. So if we make our way back over to the left hand side toolbar menu and we go ahead and we select our frame text tool, then we'll make our way back over to our canvas. And for now, we're going to draw out any Ross size text box that you like. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. But at this point, it's a good idea to turn on your margins. So we'll go ahead and make our way to the top menu bar to where we have this option right here that says toggle preview mode. That then should turn your margins on, as you can see right here in the blue. If you guys aren't seeing your margins, then all you got to do is go up to the view menu on the top menu bar and just make sure that you have that show margins checked. That way you should be able to see your margins as well. So what we're going to do with our margins now visible is we're going to use our text box to snap to these margins. So I'm going to drag that corner right there on the left hand side over to that left hand side margin, let that snap. And I'll do the exact same thing over on the right hand side. And the reason for this now is if I start putting some text inside of here and I decide to center this text, I know because it's snapped to the margins on both sides, this text now is right in the center of our document, which is going to make our design look perfect once we finish this. So what we want to do first of all is maybe just change this text to save the date. Then I'll select all of this text with Command or Control A to select all, and we can go ahead and change the font and the size of this. So going over to the left hand side top toolbar menu, we can go ahead and change our font to something that you may prefer. For me, just to be a little bit quicker, I'm going to go into my recents folder and just choose something out of here. I'll just go ahead and choose that one right there. And I'll go ahead and just make that a little bit bigger, maybe around 15 points. Then what I'm going to do next is I want to center this text in the middle of my box as well. So I can do that just up here on my alignment options. And we're going to choose this one right here, which is top align. And I'm going to change that to center vertically. Then next, I want to give my font a different color. And I think I'm going to use that exact same purple that we used here on our squares. So I'll go back over to the right hand side. And I'll select the same purple that we've done before. However, I don't want that to apply to the stroke. I want that to be the fill of the text. So I'll go ahead and change that black to purple. Then I'm going to grab my move tool and just move this down into place to where I want to put it. So maybe somewhere around there will be perfectly fine. I think I want to make this flower just that little bit bigger. So I'm just going to drag that up a little bit. Okay, so moving on, we can start adding some more text. But first of all, I think I want to change this one as I don't really like that. So I'm going to go back up here. And I think I'm going to change from that regular over to that wide light. And for me, I definitely prefer that. And now just to be a lot quicker with this, I'll make a copy of this with Command or Control C to copy and Command or Control V to paste. I'll go ahead and just drag that one down out of the way. And we'll go ahead and edit this one and give this any random name that you would like. So I just chose Tom and Lauren. So I'm going to select all of that. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it stands out more than the save the date. So maybe go double in size with that. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 30. And that will do just for a moment so I can see what I've got already. So next we're going to want another subtitle underneath that, which will say something like invite you to their wedding. So I'll go ahead and make another copy of this again. So hit Command or Control C to copy and Command or Control V to paste. Go ahead, just drag that down and double tap inside of there so we can edit this text as well. And then we can change this to invite you to their wedding. Go ahead and just select all of that text so we can resize that, as at the moment we have the same size as a Tom and a Lauren. So I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to change that to maybe 10, just so that's a little bit smaller and we can read that. And we'll start organizing all of this text in just a moment once we've written out everything else that we're going to need. So now we're going to need a date underneath this one. So once again, I'll grab my move tool and I'll make another copy of this one. So again, I'll hit Command or Control C to copy and Command or Control V to paste, move that out of the way. Go ahead and double tap inside of here so we can change this to a date. So I've just gone with the 12th of October 2024. Then once again, we'll make another copy of this using Command or Control C to copy and Command or Control V to paste. This time around, once we double click inside of here, we're going to change this to be the venue address. So this is a random wedding venue which I found on Google, and I've got the exact same font that we've used throughout. This time around, I've just changed that to be 7 points, so it's a little bit smaller. However, what I want to do here is make sure this text is closer together. So with all of that selected, I'm going to go up here to the top menu bar to where we have this option right here, which is paragraph leading. Inside of here, I want to go ahead and just change these numbers. So 1 doesn't look too bad, but I'm going to try and get a little bit closer and just go for 0. And that should do perfectly fine. Then I'll go ahead and just grab my move tool and just move this up a little bit so we can see it. And we're going to go ahead and adjust all this to look better in just a moment. But we just want to add one final bit of text, which is going to be at the bottom here. And that is going to say formal invitation to follow. So once again, just copy any of these. And then we'll just move that down the bottom. And we'll just double tap in here and just write formal invitation to follow. Then once again, just select all of that text and go and change the size of the font. So with this one, I'm going to go for roughly an 8. And now we have all of our content that we're going to need for our design. So what we want to do next is now just start moving all of this around to make it look that little bit better. So I'm going to go and turn off the toggle preview mode so we just don't see any of those blue lines for the moment. And now I can focus on just moving all this text around just to look a little bit better. So I'll go ahead and move that Tom and Lauren just a bit closer to that save the date up there. Same with the invite you to their wedding. I'll go ahead and move that a bit closer. Same with the date. I'll go ahead and just move that one up as well. Just put that into a rough position. And again with our venue address, go ahead and bring that up. So I'm going to make this box just a little bit smaller as we don't need it that big, and it's going to be a bit more manageable once we start moving this around. So I'll go ahead and just move that into place. And I'll move this formal invitation down here just a little bit. And I am going to move all this around again in just a moment, but there's just one last design element I think I want to add to this. And that is going to be just a rectangle here behind the Tom and Lauren, just to make that stand out a little bit more. So if we go over to the left hand side and we grab our rectangle tool and we just draw out a rough size rectangle to any size that you would like. I'm going to go ahead and have this just big enough to fit that text in with the invite you to their wedding. So maybe around 17 in the height, and we'll just drag that all the way across to make sure it fits. So just quickly, I'll go and toggle my preview mode back on so I can snap this to both sides of my margin. Then I'll just turn that off again quickly. So I want to turn this stroke off straight away on this rectangle. So back over on the right hand side, we'll select the stroke and we'll make that transparent so we don't see it. Then with the rectangle, I want to color that white. Then I'm going to head over to the left hand side toolbar menu and grab my move tool. And I'm just going to move this down. But what you need to keep in mind here is that has to be behind the Tom and Lauren. So if you find that it's sitting on top of your text just like that, then what you need to do is just bring that down in your layers beneath your Tom and Lauren, or whichever name that it is that you put on here. And now I'll just go ahead and move that into place to where I roughly want to put it. And somewhere around here is perfectly fine. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit, just with my arrow keys. And that should do perfectly. So if I come off that at the moment, this doesn't look very good because it's gone straight over our rectangles or our squares in the background. So what we want to do is have this sat behind this background squares. So over in our layers, we're just going to make sure that we drag this all the way down towards the bottom. Then what I also want to do with this rectangle is have it fade from the middle out to the left and out to the right. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to come up to the top menu bar on the left hand side to where it says fill. We're then going to change this from the color to the gradient. Then inside of here, we're going to double tap in the middle of here. And then we're going to make sure that this color is white. Then with the two white colors on the left hand and the right hand side, we want to change the opacity on this. So go ahead and just change that to 0 over on the left hand side, and go ahead and do the exact same thing with the right. Just go ahead and change that opacity to 0. And then once we come off this and have a look, that is looking so much better. And if you find that you want it to fade just that little bit more, just make sure you go ahead and select your rectangle, go back up into your fill, and you can just go ahead and move these lines a little bit. And then that's just going to make it fade just a little bit better on those edges, just so it kind of blends more into that white background as they fade out. So this is looking really good in my opinion, and all we really need to do now before committing to printing is just to make sure that all of our content does sit inside of our margins and that nothing will get cut off. I say that because this formal invitation down here looks as though that may be outside of my bottom margin. So what I'm going to do is go back up to the toggle preview mode and just turn that back on so I can have a look. And just as I thought, it is sitting just outside of the margin. So I will select that and I'll just bring that up slightly. and just make sure that is inside of my bottom margin. I'll adjust that with my arrow keys. And because I have so much room at the top here between this flower and the top margin, I think I'm going to actually move the entire design up a little bit. So over in my layers, I'm going to select this top layer and I'm going to hold down shift and go ahead and select the bottom layer. That way it will select all of the other layers in between that. And then we can go ahead and move this as a whole. So I'm just going to slightly drag this up a little bit to roughly where I want it to go. Maybe somewhere around there. And then with the formal invitation, I'm going to move that back down a bit towards that bottom margin to somewhere I'm more happy with. So maybe around there. And then this is looking pretty good. So if I go ahead and just turn off that toggle preview mode again. And now this is going to be the final design. So I'm really happy with this. I think it looks really good. And this is definitely something that I would give to a friend for their wedding. Of course, I do recommend that you go back and forth with just changing a few of your fonts and see if you can find something that looks a little bit better. And of course, you can always move things around if you want to. Or resize these perhaps to a different size font. Maybe put that to a 6 to make that just a little bit smaller. This is going to be your design and completely up to you what you want to do with this. So with that finished, if you want to go ahead and print this and make maybe 50 copies of this, just go up to your file menu, go down to print. Inside of your print menu, you want to make sure that you select your printer. Mine right there is a Canon. And for the size in here, I'm going to go down, I'm going to choose this A6. I had to make this A6 as a custom, as it wasn't available in all these template sizes. However, it is pretty straightforward to make a custom size for your print. So go ahead and select that A6. And now we can see a preview over here on the left hand side of how our invitation is going to look. And all you got to simply do is put in 60 or however many copies that you would like and go ahead and hit that print button. Then get yourself some envelopes, put them in the post and send them out to all your friends and family, and it is as simple as that. So I hope you found today's video useful and you learned something new, and I will see you in the next one.